My husband looked me right in the eye on Christmas Eve and told me to get out of our house. He blocked the front door, handed me his credit card, and said his boss was staying over, and my presence would embarrass him. He told me to go sleep in a hotel because I simply was not elite enough for his corporate guests. What he did not know was that the very empire he was trying so desperately to impress was secretly paying my salary, and his entire career rested in the palm of the hands he had just pushed out into the snow. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to smile through the pain of someone underestimating your true worth. My name is Nia. I am 35 years old and I fix disasters for a living. The winter wind off Lake Michigan was brutally cold that evening, but it felt like a warm breeze compared to the chill in my husband Marcus's voice. I was standing on the frozen porch of the upscale Chicago townhouse we shared, holding a bag of groceries I had just bought for our holiday dinner. Marcus stood in the doorway, physically blocking my path. He was wearing a custom-tailored suit, smelling of expensive cologne, and looking at me with a mixture of annoyance and utter disdain. I asked him why he was not letting me inside, and he did not even have the decency to look ashamed. "Nia," he said, his voice flat and unapologetic, "you cannot come home tonight. My boss and his wife are staying over after the company gala. You know how you dress around the house. You are always so sloppy and your way of speaking just does not fit with the elite crowd I am trying to network with. Grab your things and go to a hotel for the night." I stood there, freezing the heavy snow falling around me, trying to process the sheer audacity of his words. This was my home. I had picked out the curtains. I had arranged the furniture. I had contributed heavily to the down payment. But to Marcus, I was suddenly a stain on his perfect corporate image. He actually reached into his pocket, pulled out his platinum credit card, and shoved it into my frozen hand. He told me to treat myself to some room service and stay out of sight until tomorrow afternoon. He said it was for the good of his career, and as a supportive wife, I needed to make this small sacrifice for his success. I did not scream. I did not cry. I am a woman who handles global corporate disasters, so I know exactly when to remain completely calm. I took the card, turned around, and walked back out into the blistering Chicago snow while he shut the heavy oak door behind me without a second thought. Dragging my small emergency suitcase down the icy sidewalk, I felt a strange sense of clarity washing over me. Marcus had spent the last 3 years obsessing over his title as a sales director. He was consumed with status, with luxury brands, and with climbing the corporate ladder at any cost. And as his ambition grew, his respect for me completely vanished. Because I worked from home often, sitting on our living room sofa in sweatpants and a messy bun, Marcus had convinced himself that I was just a lazy freelancer. He thought I was barely scraping by doing low-level administrative work or typing up meaningless blog posts for pocket change. He told his friends I was a virtual assistant. He told his family I was just playing on my computer all day while he did the real work. The irony was so thick I could practically choke on it. The truth was, I am a crisis public relations fixer. I am the shadow operative that billionaire CEOs call at 3 in the morning when their companies are facing catastrophic scandals. I handle national media blackouts, I strategize billion-dollar corporate mergers, and I make front-page disasters disappear before the stock market even opens. I wear sweatpants because when you are saving a global brand from total ruin over a secure encrypted server, your wardrobe is the last thing on earth that matters. But I kept my work strictly confidential due to ironclad non-disclosure agreements. I never bragged about my massive income, and I certainly never flashed my wealth the way Marcus did. I wanted a marriage based on love and mutual respect, not a transaction based on power and money. But Marcus interpreted my silence as weakness and my humility as failure. This toxic mindset was entirely fueled by his family. The Jenkins clan was notorious in our local African American community for their absolute obsession with appearances. His mother, Mama Jenkins, was a staple at the Sunday church services, where she judged everyone from the pulpit to the pews. She constantly reminded me that I was incredibly lucky her successful son had settled for a woman like me. Then there was Marcus's sister Tasha, who lived way beyond her means and looked down on me for driving a 5-year-old sedan. And of course, there was his white brother-in-law Bradley. Bradley had married into the family and constantly paraded his supposed superiority, despite the fact that he was drowning in debt from terrible cryptocurrency investments. They all treated me like the family charity case. They honestly believed Marcus was giving me a roof over my head out of the kindness of his generous heart. As I hailed a cab in the freezing snow heading toward a cheap downtown motel because I refused to use his arrogant credit card for anything luxurious, I realized the marriage was already over. Marcus had not just locked me out of our house. He had locked me out of his life because he genuinely thought I was not good enough for his world. He wanted a shiny trophy to display to his boss, not a partner to share his life. He was willing to leave me out in the freezing cold on the most family-oriented night of the year, all to protect a fragile ego and a corporate lie. I checked my phone as the cab drove through the illuminated streets of Chicago. I had 3 unread emails from the executive board of the very company Marcus worked for. They were begging for my immediate intervention on a massive corporate crisis. I looked out the window at the holiday lights, a cold smile forming on my lips. Marcus wanted to play corporate power games. He had no idea he had just challenged the woman who owned the entire board. The camera holds at a low angle, tracking the slow, deliberate movement of Nia's hand as she lifts a cheap glass tumbler. The harsh fluorescent lighting of the budget hotel room catches the amber liquid inside, a harsh contrast to the vintage crystal she usually drinks from at home. She takes a sip of the harsh bourbon, letting the burn ground her in reality. On the laminated desk beside her sits a greasy cardboard box holding a single slice of cold, stiff pizza. She takes a mechanical bite. It tastes like cardboard, and defeat a bitter substitute for the prime holiday roast she had spent 2 days preparing for her husband. The sheer indignity of the situation threatens to suffocate her. Banished to a roadside motel on Christmas Eve by the man who swore to protect her, she pushes the pizza box away with a look of utter disgust. Wallowing in self-pity is a luxury she simply cannot afford. She pulls her heavy-duty laptop from her bag and flips it open. The screen casts a stark blue glow across her face, illuminating eyes that are rapidly shedding their vulnerability and turning to absolute steel. She bypasses the standard desktop interface, entering a complex string of commands to access her encrypted multi-layered servers. She is a crisis manager for the 1%, dealing with information so volatile it could crash the stock market. She logs in to check on a delicate corporate merger she is quietly steering from the shadows, but a flashing red notification in the corner of her screen breaks her concentration. It is not a client emergency. It is an automated security ping from her own residential network. When Nia upgraded their penthouse smart home system 3 months ago, she hardwired a backdoor protocol linked directly to her administrative dashboard. Marcus never understood technology beyond his expensive smartphone, so he had no idea she monitored the digital pulse of their entire home. The alert indicates a massive surge in bandwidth usage and over 24 unrecognized devices connecting to their secure private Wi-Fi network. Her brow furrows. Marcus claimed he was hosting an intimate, elite corporate sleepover with his boss and his boss's wife. 2 middle-aged executives do not generate this kind of digital footprint at midnight on Christmas Eve. Her fingers fly across the glowing keyboard with lethal precision. She taps into the penthouse security mainframe. Marcus had deactivated the commercial cameras through the standard phone app, believing he had plunged the house into complete darkness. He had no clue that the woman he dismissed as a lazy freelancer had written the underlying code for the entire security grid. It takes her less than 40 seconds to bypass his clumsy digital lockout and reactivate the hidden feeds. The live video feed loads on her screen and the breath leaves Nia's lungs. The pristine living room of her penthouse is completely unrecognizable. It is not hosting a quiet, sophisticated corporate networking session. The space is bathed in strobing neon lights. Expensive art pieces have been shoved aside and empty liquor bottles litter the custom-imported rugs she spent months selecting. A wild, chaotic party is in full, deafening swing. The camera feed zooms in sharply on the center of the room right in front of their marble fireplace. Marcus is standing there, his expensive silk tie discarded on the floor, his shirt unbuttoned halfway down his chest. He is holding a glass of champagne, laughing uproariously, with his hands running possessively down the back of a blonde woman, poured into a scandalous sequined dress. Nia recognizes the woman instantly, and the realization hits her like a physical blow to the chest. It is Valerie. Valerie is the reckless, highly unstable daughter of the chairman of the largest financial conglomerate in Chicago. The very same conglomerate where Marcus is currently clawing his way up the middle management ladder. Valerie is a notorious trust fund heiress with a severe substance abuse problem, a woman whose chaotic scandals have nearly tanked her father's company multiple times. Nia knows this intimately, because Nia is the exact operative the chairman secretly pays exorbitant amounts of cash to scrub Valerie's drug-fueled arrests and public meltdowns from the internet. The pieces of the cruel puzzle snap together with horrifying clarity. There is no boss. There is no corporate networking event. Marcus had thrown his own wife out into a blizzard, humiliated her, and banished her to a cheap motel, all so he could turn their marital home into a playground for a spoiled, addicted heiress. He was sleeping with the boss's daughter to secure his precious promotion. The sheer weight of the betrayal is staggering. It is a calculated, devastating knife directly to the back. For a fraction of a second, the image of Marcus kissing Valerie's neck threatens to break her. The natural reaction for a betrayed wife would be to collapse, to weep into her hands, to call his phone and scream until her voice gave out. Nia does not shed a single tear. The camera pushes in, dollying slowly toward her face. The hurt evaporates from her features, instantly replaced by an icy, terrifying calm. Marcus thinks he has played a brilliant game of chess, securing his future by discarding her like trash. He has no idea that he just invited a predator into his home. The sadness dies, giving birth to the ruthless PR fixer who destroys empires before breakfast. She opens a new terminal window on her screen. If Marcus wants to play in the deep, dangerous waters of the Chicago elite, she is going to show him exactly who controls the tide. She initiates a silent, untraceable background sweep on his personal accounts, hunting for his hidden offshore wallets and financial indiscretions. She locks onto Valerie's digital location tags, seamlessly intercepting the party's network traffic. With surgical precision, Nia begins downloading every single second of the high-definition security footage directly to her secure offshore cloud drive. She captures the exact moment Marcus hands Valerie a suspicious small plastic bag. She captures the illegal substances scattered across their custom glass coffee table. She captures the undeniable proof of his infidelity and his illegal activities, neatly packaging the absolute ruin of his entire corporate existence into an encrypted folder. She hits the save button, the harsh light of the screen reflecting in her unblinking eyes. Marcus wants to treat her like a peasant. He is about to learn what happens when you wage war against a queen. She cracks her knuckles, straightens her posture in the cheap motel chair, and begins to type. The harsh glow of the laptop screen reflects in Nia's eyes as she initiates the final data transfer. The progress bar hits 100%. A sharp snap zoom pushes past the cheap motel furniture, landing directly on her face. A slow, chilling smirk spreads across her lips. The camera begins a deliberate, unbroken orbit shot around her, capturing the sheer transformation in her posture. She is no longer the discarded wife sitting in a rundown room. She is an apex predator who just secured the keys to the kingdom, armed with enough digital ammunition to obliterate Marcus and his entire arrogant family. She glances at the digital clock on the bottom corner of her screen. 12:01 a.m. Merry Christmas. She reaches for the motel television remote and switches to the premier national financial news network. The volume is low, but the bright, bold graphics flash across the screen, announcing a breaking midnight exclusive. A massive $5 billion corporate merger has just been finalized, shaking the global markets. The anchor's voice is crisp and urgent, detailing how a catastrophic public relations disaster was expertly averted over the past 48 hours, saving the historic deal from total collapse. Then the anchor drops the name. The mastermind behind the Save the legendary crisis manager who orchestrated the entire strategy from the shadows is none other than Chicago's own Nia Jenkins. A high-resolution corporate photo of Nia fills the television screen. In the photo, she looks flawless, commanding, and absolutely untouchable. She is wearing a sharp-tailored blazer, projecting an aura of pure authority. It is a stark contrast to the sweatpants Marcus mocked just hours ago. Right on cue, her cell phone vibrates violently against the laminated desk. The caller ID flashes the name Marcus. She lets it vibrate. She watches the phone buzz and dance across the cheap wood, savoring the desperate, panicked rhythm of his calls. He calls once. He calls twice. He calls a third time in rapid succession. Nia picks up the phone swipes to accept the call and presses the device to her ear. She does not say a single word. She just listens. Marcus is practically hyperventilating on the other end of the line. The heavy bass of the wild party has vanished, replaced by the hollow echo of a man who has clearly locked himself in a bathroom to confront his own staggering stupidity. His voice is a frantic, high-pitched mixture of outrage, confusion, and absolute terror. "Nia, why are you on national television right now?" His words tumble out in a desperate, breathless rush. "Why are they calling you the mastermind behind a $5 billion merger? What is going on? Why is your face on the financial news network? How much money have you been hiding from me?" Nia remains perfectly still. She lets his frantic questions hang in the heavy silence. She pictures him sweating in his expensive suit, his fragile ego shattering into a million pieces, as he realizes the woman he just kicked out into the snow is operating on a level he could never even dream of reaching. He realizes she is not a lazy freelancer. He realizes she is a titan in the corporate world. And above all, his greed is taking over, wondering how many millions of dollars his wife has been keeping out of his reach. "Nia, answer me right now. You are my wife. We share everything. What is this money? Why did not you tell me you were running deals like this?" His tone shifts erratically from demanding to pleading, the arrogant superiority he displayed on their front porch, completely stripped away by pure, unadulterated greed. He is salivating over wealth he thinks he is entitled to. Nia takes a slow, steady breath. The air in the motel room is stale, but her mind is crystal clear. Her voice drops an octave into a register of pure ice. She speaks clearly, ensuring every single syllable registers in his panicked brain. "You told me I did not fit in with the elite, Marcus. You told me my presence would embarrass you. So I took your advice. I removed myself from your presence. Do not ever call this number again." She pulls the phone away from her ear while he is still screaming her name and presses the red button to end the call. She slides the phone across the desk, picks up her glass of bourbon, and takes a final, satisfying sip. She leans back in the chair, watching her own face dominate the television broadcast. The battle lines have been drawn. The war has officially begun, and Marcus does not even realize he has already lost. The camera pulls back slowly. A smooth, deliberate dolly out reveals Nia standing perfectly still in the center of Mama Jenkins's stifling, overly decorated living room. The shot widens to capture the entire family closing in around her, creating the suffocating visual of a lone deer dropped into a den of starving wolves. But Nia is no prey. She is wearing a razor-sharp tailored crimson suit that screams power, her posture unyielding. It is Sunday afternoon. Marcus never offered a single syllable of apology for the Christmas Eve banishment. He never addressed the terrifying phone call at midnight. He certainly never confessed to the drug-fueled infidelity currently sitting encrypted on Nia's offshore server. Instead, he simply sent a rigid calendar invite demanding her attendance at the mandatory family dinner, acting as if the entire world had not shifted on its axis. He thought he could gloss over his betrayal by pretending nothing happened. He was wrong. The air in the room is thick with the smell of pot roast and overwhelming, suffocating greed. Mama Jenkins glides through the swinging kitchen doors carrying a tray of iced tea. She is a woman who wields her church attendance like a weapon masking profound toxicity behind a bright, practiced, and entirely fake smile. For the past 5 years, Mama Jenkins has exclusively referred to Nia as that freelance girl. She routinely forgot Nia's birthdays and famously gifted her a vacuum cleaner for her first wedding anniversary. Today, however, her smile is stretched so wide it looks physically painful. Praise the Lord for bringing our most successful, beautiful daughter home today. Mama Jenkins projects her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. She sets the tray down and reaches out to grasp Nia's hands. The Lord has surely blessed this household with your hidden talents, child. We were watching the news. My goodness, working with billionaires right under our very roof. Nia smoothly withdraws her hands under the pretense of adjusting her watch. She offers a tight, chillingly polite smile. From the hallway, Tasha strides into the room. Usually Marcus's younger sister greets Nia with a cutting remark about her hair, her weight, or her lack of a corporate title. Tasha is fiercely arrogant, convinced she is the pinnacle of high society, despite living entirely off her mother's credit cards. Today, Tasha's eyes are wide, practically vibrating with dollar signs. She bypasses her brother entirely and steps right into Nia's personal space. That crimson blazer is absolutely breathtaking, Nia. Tasha gushes her eyes, scanning the fabric for a designer label. I always told Marcus you were too brilliant to just be typing away in the guest room. We need to go shopping this week. I have my eye on a commercial lease downtown for my new luxury boutique, and I would love an investor of your caliber to take a look at the floor plans. Nia does not blink. She simply observes the transparent pivot. Yesterday, Tasha called her a freeloader. Today, she wants venture capital for a doomed retail store. Leaning casually against the doorframe is Bradley, Tasha's husband. Bradley is a man whose entire personality is constructed around unearned superiority and tech buzzwords. He views himself as the financial alpha of the room, a white-collar genius who constantly talks down to Nia about the economy. What the rest of the family does not know is that Bradley is currently drowning in a catastrophic sea of liquidated cryptocurrency debt. Nia knows this because she ran a routine background sweep on the entire family 6 months ago. Bradley owes highly dangerous people a very large amount of money. Bradley takes a sip of his craft beer and points a finger at Nia, wearing a smarmy, overly confident grin. $5 billion, he says, shaking his head in mock disbelief. That takes serious institutional liquidity to pull off. You know holding cash is a rookie mistake in this economy. The blockchain is where the real generational wealth is shifting. I manage a decentralized startup portfolio that could double your liquid yield in 6 weeks. We should sit down in my office after dinner and talk allocations. The sheer audacity of the room is intoxicating. Nia stands in the center of the crossfire, translating their thinly veiled compliments into their true, desperate meanings. Mama Jenkins wants a massive donation to secure her status at the mega church. Tasha wants a free ride to pretend she is a business owner. Bradley wants a lifeline to stop his crypto margin calls from destroying his life. And then there is Marcus. He stands near the faux stone fireplace, sweating through his expensive dress shirt. He looks terrified. He has not slept a single minute since the midnight broadcast. He is trying desperately to play the role of the proud, supportive husband, but his eyes constantly dart toward Nia, silently begging her not to expose him. He thinks she is just holding back financial secrets. He has absolutely no idea that she holds the high-definition video of his infidelity and drug use. Marcus steps forward, attempting to wrap a possessive arm around Nia's waist to claim his territory in front of the family. Nia shifts her weight flawlessly, stepping just out of his reach to admire a terrible porcelain figurine on the mantel. Marcus's hand grasps empty air. He swallows hard, his jaw clenching in muted panic. Dinner is ready, Mama Jenkins announces, ignoring the awkward exchange. She herds them all toward the formal dining table. The meal is an orchestrated interrogation disguised as a celebration. The passing of the mashed potatoes is accompanied by relentless probing questions about Nia's net worth. They ask about her client list. They ask about offshore accounts. They ask how much of a percentage she took from the $5 billion deal. They speak to her not as a family member but as a bank vault they are desperately trying to crack the code to. Nia eats her meal with perfect, agonizingly slow etiquette. She gives them nothing. She answers their invasive questions with masterfully vague corporate jargon, expertly spinning their greed right back into their faces. When Tasha brings up the boutique lease again, Nia calmly suggests that Tasha should probably secure a basic business license and a credit score above 600 before discussing commercial real estate. Tasha's face flushes a deep, angry crimson, but she forces a laugh, too afraid of the money to snap back. When Bradley pushes his crypto portfolio, Nia fixes him with a deadpan stare. She casually mentions that volatile margin trading on unregulated exchanges usually leads to severe debt collection, specifically mentioning the exact firm Bradley currently owes money to. Bradley chokes on his dinner roll, his face turning a sickly shade of white. He stares at her in absolute terror, suddenly realizing she might know exactly how pathetic he truly is. Mama Jenkins tries to regain control of the table, tapping her fork against her crystal glass. We are just so blessed that Marcus chose a wife capable of elevating the Jenkins family name. You two are a power couple now. What is yours is his, and what is his is yours. That is the holy covenant of marriage. Nia sets her silverware down. The metal clinks loudly against the expensive china. The entire table falls dead silent. She looks directly at Marcus, her eyes turning into dark, fathomless voids. You are absolutely right, Mama Jenkins. Nia says, her voice smooth, melodic, and laced with lethal intent. What is his is definitely mine. Every single asset, every single secret, every single late-night networking event. I own all of it. Marcus drops his fork. It clatters to the floor. The blood completely drains from his face as the double meaning of her words strikes him like a physical blow. The wolves thought they were circling a wealthy, naive sheep. They are just now beginning to realize they have locked themselves in a cage with a monster. Nia picks up her wine glass, takes a delicate sip, and smiles. The real games are about to begin. The suffocating silence that follows Marcus dropping his fork stretches into an unbearable eternity. The metallic clatter against the hardwood floor seems to echo off the overly patterned wallpaper, but Mama Jenkins simply refuses to let the atmosphere shatter her meticulously planned agenda. The room feels as though it is physically tilting, the air growing dense and unbreathable, pressing inward from all sides. It is a psychological funhouse mirror completely distorted by the sheer volume of entitlement radiating from the people sitting around the mahogany table. Mama Jenkins reaches for her crystal water goblet, taking a slow, deliberate sip before setting it down with a heavy thud. She adjusts the collar of her floral Sunday dress and pastes on a smile so rigid it looks as though her jaw might snap. She bypasses the undeniable threat hanging in the air and steers the conversation directly into her own twisted reality. She believes she is the matriarch of an empire, and in her mind, Nia has just revealed herself to be nothing more than a highly lucrative vault waiting to be plundered. The Lord works in mysterious ways. Mama Jenkins begins, her voice taking on the rhythmic preaching cadence she usually reserves for the front pew of her congregation. She steeples her fingers beneath her chin, locking her sharp, calculating eyes onto Nia. He has guided you to this remarkable harvest, child. $5 billion is a number crafted by divine intervention, but the scripture tells us that a harvest is not meant to be hoarded by one pair of hands. God has blessed you, and now it is time to show filial piety. It is time to bring that blessing home to the people who gave you a family. Nia sits perfectly still. She does not reach for her wine. She does not adjust her napkin. She simply studies the older woman with the detached fascination of a scientist observing a highly toxic parasite. Mama Jenkins leans forward, the mask of Christian charity slipping to reveal the ruthless greed underneath. You have access to the absolute top of the corporate ladder now. Men who own cities, men who own entire industries. You must use those connections immediately. You are going to make a few calls and secure Marcus the regional director seat by the end of the fiscal quarter. He has put in the sweat, and you are going to clear the final hurdle for him. Furthermore, Bradley has encountered a temporary blockade with his digital investments. You are going to pump $2 million into his company by Tuesday. That is the duty of a good black wife, Nia. You elevate the men in your family. You build their foundation. You do not keep the spoils of war for yourself while the head of your household waits in line. The sheer audacity of the demand lands on the dining table like a physical weight. $2 million and a regional directorship ordered as casually as passing a plate of green beans. Marcus shifts uncomfortably in his seat. His face is a mask of pure terror. He knows Nia is angry, but his cowardice prevents him from interrupting his mother. He desperately wants the promotion, and the thought of Nia actually delivering it keeps his mouth firmly shut even as he sweats through his collar. Before Nia can process the staggering delusion of her mother-in-law, Bradley seizes the opportunity. He smells money, and his fragile, bruised ego demands that he assert his dominance over the woman holding the checkbook. He leans back in his dining chair, hooking his thumbs into the belt loops of his expensive, unpaid-for slacks. He lets out a patronizing, breathy chuckle, shaking his head as if dealing with a particularly slow child. "Let us be entirely objective here, Nia," Bradley says, his voice dripping with unearned superiority and a sickening undercurrent of racial condescension. $5 billion is a massive headline. It is a great PR spin. But you and I both know how the corporate climate operates right now. The market is desperate for optics. Corporations are scrambling to hit their diversity quotas to put a minority face on massive victories. You were in the right place at the right time. You hit the diversity jackpot. It is pure luck. You grabbed the coattails of a giant merger because these billionaires needed a shield. Tasha nods vigorously, chewing on her lower lip as she glares at Nia. Exactly. It is just corporate politics. You should be grateful they let you take the credit at all. Bradley holds up a hand, silencing his wife so he can continue his grand speech. The room continues its sickening tilted spin. But managing a $2 million liquid capital injection is not about optics or diversity hires, Nia. It requires a masculine, aggressive fiscal strategy. The blockchain is entirely unregulated high-stakes warfare. You have stumbled into some serious networking cash, but you lack the institutional mindset to multiply it. I have the infrastructure. I have the decentralized framework. You wire the $2 million into my holding account and I will double your lucky windfall before the end of the year. I will do the heavy lifting while you enjoy the press tour. Nia stares at the pale, sweating man sitting across from her. He is drowning in catastrophic margin calls. He is actively dodging phone calls from violent creditors because his algorithmic trading bot completely cannibalized his life savings. Yet he sits at a Sunday dinner table looking down his nose at a self-made crisis manager, reducing her genius, her sleepless nights, and her undeniable power to affirmative action and blind luck. He demands a $2 million bailout while simultaneously stripping her of her humanity and her intellect. The silence returns heavier and darker than before. Everyone at the table is waiting for Nia to bow her head. They expect her to crave their validation so deeply that she will open her accounts just to prove she is worthy of their last name. They expect the dutiful, submissive wife who spent 3 days making a Christmas roast. Nia finally moves. She reaches out with deliberate glacial slowness and picks up her linen napkin. She dabs the corner of her mouth, places the napkin neatly beside her plate, and folds her hands on the table. The temperature in the room plummets. When she speaks, her voice is not raised. It is quiet, resonant, and entirely lethal. A diversity jackpot. Nia repeats, letting the vile phrase hang in the air so Bradley can hear exactly how stupid he sounds. She tilts her head, her dark eyes locking onto his pale face. Tell me, Bradley, did your masculine, aggressive fiscal strategy predict the total collapse of your Ethereum portfolio last Thursday? Or did it only factor in the $340,000 you currently owe to the unregulated loan sharks operating out of the South Side? Bradley stops breathing. The smug, condescending smile slides off his face, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated horror. Tasha drops her fork, her head snapping toward her husband. "Do not look so surprised," Nia says, her voice slicing through the heavy air like a scalpel. You run a decentralized portfolio on an unencrypted server with the password strength of a toddler. I audited your entire financial existence while waiting for my coffee to brew. You are not a pioneer, Bradley. You are a mark. You are bleeding cash, your house is 90 days away from foreclosure, and you are begging the woman you just called a diversity hire to save your pathetic life. She does not let him respond. She turns her gaze slowly, deliberately, until it rests entirely on Mama Jenkins. The older woman has gone completely rigid, her knuckles white as she grips the edge of the dining table. And as for my duty as a black wife, Nia continues, her tone dripping with absolute venom. My duty is to protect my peace, my sanity, and my empire from parasites masquerading as family. You want me to buy your son a promotion he is too incompetent to earn. You want me to fund your daughter's delusions. You want me to pay off your son-in-law's catastrophic debts. You want to feast on the harvest I planted with my own 2 hands, all while sitting at the head of the table telling me I am not worthy of the chair. Marcus finally finds his voice, standing up so fast his chair screeches against the floor. Nia, stop it right now. You are talking to my mother. You are crossing a line. Nia stands up. She does not rush. She rises to her full height, smoothing the front of her crimson blazer. She looks at her husband, the man she watched inhaling drugs and kissing an heiress on a high-definition security feed just 48 hours ago. I am not crossing a line, Marcus, Nia says softly, offering him a smile that promises absolute destruction. I am erasing the entire map. The dinner is lovely, Mama Jenkins, but I think I have had my fill of the Jenkins family charity. She turns on her heel and walks toward the front door. Behind her, the dining room descends into absolute chaos. Tasha is screaming at Bradley about the foreclosure. Mama Jenkins is shouting Bible verses mixed with insults. Marcus is frozen, trapped between the wreckage of his family and the terrifying realization that his wife holds the detonator to his entire life. Nia steps out into the crisp Sunday air, the suffocating atmosphere of the house breaking the moment the door clicks shut behind her. The wolves wanted a feast. They are about to starve. Marcus's hand clamps down on Nia's forearm, just inches from the brass handle of the front door. The camera instantly cuts to a handheld perspective, the frame jittering and tilting into a harsh Dutch angle, creating a jarring, seasick visual that captures the erratic, panicked energy radiating from him. The sudden physical contact jerks Nia to a halt. Marcus is breathing heavily, a sheen of nervous sweat coating his forehead, his face flushed with a terrifying cocktail of blind panic and bruised masculinity. You are not walking out on this, family. Marcus spits out, his grip tightening as he tries to physically drag her a step back toward the dining room archway. He is desperate to regain the upper hand, desperate to perform the role of the dominant patriarch in front of his mother and sister. You think you can just drop a few financial buzzwords, insult my family, and walk away? You are nothing without us, Nia. Nothing. Nia looks down at his hand, gripping the sleeve of her immaculate crimson blazer. Her expression remains perfectly blank, but the temperature in the room seems to drop another 10 degrees. She shifts her gaze slowly up to his eyes, delivering a silent threat so absolute, so devoid of fear, that Marcus involuntarily loosens his grip. She brushes her sleeve off and steps back into the dining room, stepping directly back into the crossfire entirely on her own terms. Seeing her return, Mama Jenkins assumes she has won. The older woman stands at the head of the table, clutching her linen napkin to her chest, and immediately launches into a frantic, calculated campaign of psychological manipulation. Lord have mercy on your greedy, wicked soul! Mama Jenkins cries out, her voice vibrating with practiced theatricality. We took you in when you were scraping by. We brought you into polite society. We introduced you to people of real substance and gave you the Jenkins name to wear like a crown. We gave you respectability. And this is how you repay my son. This is how you repay our Christian charity, by hoarding your blessings, by turning your back on your husband, when he asks for a simple, dutiful favor to secure his rightful place in the corporate world. You are possessed by a selfish, ugly spirit, Nia. Tasha steps out from behind her mother, pointing a manicured finger directly at Nia's face. You are an ungrateful fraud, Tasha shrieks, her voice echoing shrilly off the vaulted ceilings. You have always been jealous of this family. You just wanted to steal our connections and our pedigree. You sit there hoarding wealth while your own blood suffers. You are a toxic, miserable woman, and you are destroying this family from the inside out, just because you think you are finally better than us. Marcus steps up beside his mother, clearly emboldened by the barrage of gaslighting. He needs to break her down. He needs her to believe she is small so he can feel large. He slams his open palm down hard on the mahogany dining table. The impact rattles the crystal goblets and makes the heavy silverware jump. The handheld camera shakes violently with the blow, the tilted angle amplifying the suffocating, chaotic aggression in the room. "I made you," Marcus barks, his voice cracking with pure desperation. "Do you hear me? You use my last name to get into those boardrooms. No one would look twice at a nobody freelancer without the Jenkins brand backing her up. You got that crisis management contract because they saw my name on your resume. You owe us your entire career. Everything you have is because I allowed you to have it. You are going to make those calls, Nia. You are going to secure my director position, and you are going to wire that money to Bradley, because that is your job as my wife." The air in the room is toxic, thick with delusion and manipulative rage. They are trying to rewrite reality, trying to convince a brilliant self-made titan that she is nothing more than a byproduct of their mediocre existence. Nia stands perfectly still amidst the screaming and the table slamming. The chaotic, shaky camera movement contrasts sharply with her absolute chilling stillness. She does not raise her voice. She does not shed a single tear. She does not waste a single breath trying to defend her intelligence or convince a room full of parasites that she earned every dollar and every victory with her own brilliant mind. Explaining herself to them would imply that their opinions carry weight. Defending her achievements would validate their absurd claims. Instead, she slowly raises her left hand. The room falls instantly silent. The family holds their collective breath, mistakenly, believing they have finally broken her down. They think the relentless barrage of gaslighting has worked. They expect a tearful apology. They expect submission. Nia uses her right thumb and index finger to pinch the 2-carat diamond engagement ring and the matching platinum wedding band on her left hand. With one smooth, deliberate motion, she slides the rings over her knuckle. She holds the glittering diamonds up to the chandelier light for a fraction of a second, observing the jewelry as if it were a cheap trinket retrieved from a dusty attic. She looks directly at Marcus. His chest is heaving, his eyes wide and completely uncomprehending. Nia takes 2 slow, measured steps forward, closing the distance to the dining table. She extends her hand directly over Marcus's spot at the table, right above his half-eaten, rapidly cooling bowl of thick potato leek soup. She opens her fingers. The heavy platinum rings drop. They hit the surface of the soup with a sickening wet splash, sinking instantly to the bottom, buried forever in the murky, lukewarm liquid. "Keep your delusions," Nia says. Her voice is a flawless, icy whisper that cuts through the heavy silence like a razor blade. It carries no anger, no sorrow, and no regret. It is the sound of absolute, irreversible finality. She does not look at Mama Jenkins' horrified gasp. She does not look at Tasha's stunned open mouth. She does not look at Marcus, who is staring down at his soup bowl as if he has just watched his entire life disintegrate into dust. Nia simply turns her back on the entire room. Her posture is immaculate, her steps measured and unhurried. The camera follows her from behind, the jerky, tilted movement finally smoothing out into a steady, triumphant tracking shot as she reaches the front door. She turns the brass handle, pulls the door open, and walks out into the bright, crisp afternoon sunlight. The heavy wooden door clicks firmly shut behind her, sealing the Jenkins family inside their own collapsing, toxic world, leaving them to finally choke on the reality of what they have lost. The shot cuts sharply to an extreme close-up of Nia's eyes. The warm, suffocating tones of the Jenkins dining room are instantly replaced by a stark, clinical, cool blue light. The reflection of a glowing computer monitor dances across her irises. She is unblinking, calculating, cold. The camera is handheld now, vibrating with a subtle, rhythmic tremor that mimics a racing heartbeat, building an atmosphere of escalating, suffocating tension. A heavy, authoritative knock shatters the silence of her temporary downtown executive suite. Nia opens the door to find a process server thrusting a thick, aggressively bound stack of legal documents into her hands. Marcus has not just filed for divorce. He has declared scorched earth warfare. Nia carries the heavy stack to her glass desk and spreads the pages out under the cool blue light. One glance at the letterhead tells her everything she needs to know. It is the crest of Sterling and Vance, the most ruthless, exorbitantly expensive corporate litigation firm in the Midwest. Marcus could not afford their retainer if he sold every organ in his body. Valerie is pulling the strings. The heiress mistress has unleashed her family's corporate attack dogs to crush the woman standing in her way. The demands laid out in the crisp legal font are utterly delusional, yet meticulously designed to paralyze. Valerie's lawyers have already secured an emergency ex parte order. Every single joint bank account Nia shared with Marcus has been completely frozen. Her access to their suburban home has been legally revoked, the locks already changed. But the true masterpiece of their audacity lies on page 4. Marcus is officially petitioning for massive spousal support. He is claiming severe emotional distress and financial abuse, arguing that Nia maliciously concealed her immense corporate wealth while forcing him to shoulder the financial burden of their household for years. He is positioning himself as the battered, deceived husband, entitled to half of her newly discovered empire. Before Nia can even process the absurd alimony demands, her cell phone erupts. The screen lights up with a relentless, blinding cascade of notifications. It is not support. It is a synchronized, highly orchestrated social assassination. Mama Jenkins has mobilized the most vicious weapon in her arsenal. She has weaponized the entire megachurch congregation against Nia. Marcus is playing his role with Oscar-winning devotion, weeping to the church elders about his shattered vows and his broken home. The narrative Mama Jenkins has planted is a masterpiece of toxic fiction. She has completely inverted reality, convincing the entire congregation that Nia is a promiscuous, greedy opportunist who lived a wicked double life. The lie, spreading like wildfire through the prayer groups, is that Nia slept her way through corporate boardrooms to secure her sudden wealth, and that she violently abandoned her devoted, hard-working husband on Christmas Eve to run away with a secret billionaire lover. They are painting Marcus as a saintly martyr who was blindsided by a sociopathic wife. The gaslighting is absolute and suffocating. The very same women who smiled and prayed with Nia just weeks ago are now flooding her inbox with vile, condemning messages. They call her a Jezebel. They accuse her of poisoning a holy household. The pastor's wife publishes a lengthy, thinly veiled public post about wicked women straying from the righteous path, tagging Marcus to offer public prayers for his broken heart. The comments beneath the post are a terrifying echo chamber of misplaced righteous fury. Nia watches in real time as her community, her friends, and her entire social safety net completely turn their backs on her. They block her numbers. They delete her from group chats. She is officially exiled. Marcus and Valerie are attempting a total blockade. They are trying to starve her out ruthlessly, cutting off her finances, her home, and her community. They want the sheer crushing weight of the isolation to force her into a desperate, groveling surrender. They want her to beg for mercy before she can ever release the evidence of his infidelity. The handheld camera pushes in closer, the harsh Dutch angle perfectly capturing a world that has been violently turned upside down. The blue light casts sharp, dangerous shadows across Nia's cheekbones. A lesser woman would break under the immense psychological pressure. A lesser woman would be weeping on the floor, calling lawyers in a blind panic, begging the church elders to believe her innocence, fighting desperately to reclaim a community that discarded her so easily. Nia does none of these things. She sets the phone face down on the glass desk, silencing the endless stream of fabricated outrage. She looks at the formal notice of the frozen bank accounts. A slow, chilling smirk touches the corner of her mouth. They actually think locking her out of a pathetic joint checking account containing a few $1,000s will financially cripple a woman who just orchestrated a $5 billion corporate merger. They actually believe that weaponizing church gossip will emotionally break a legendary crisis manager who routinely buries international corporate scandals for breakfast. Marcus and Valerie believe they are playing a high-stakes game of chess. They do not realize Nia flipped the board days ago. They have brought a butter knife to a nuclear war. Nia reaches for her keyboard, her posture radiating absolute terrifying control. Her fingers hover over the illuminated keys. The blue light reflects brightly in her dark eyes as she prepares to show her husband and his billionaire mistress exactly what a real, inescapable smear campaign looks like. The Steadicam glides silently over the polished hardwood of the executive suite, capturing the scene with a fluid, relentless momentum. It follows Nia from a low angle, tracking her smooth, predatory strides. She moves like a panther sizing up a wounded gazelle, her posture radiating an eerie, unshakable calm. She does not pace out of anxiety. She paces to measure the exact dimensions of her upcoming strike. On the glass desk, the towering stack of legal threats from Sterling and Vance sits exactly where she left it. She stops, turns on her heel, and approaches the desk with chilling purpose. She picks up a heavy, gold-plated fountain pen and flips directly to the signature pages. The camera angles down, capturing the crisp, fluid motion of her wrist. She signs away the deed to the suburban colonial. She signs away her claim to the luxury SUVs. She signs the waiver consenting to the frozen joint accounts. She legally surrenders every material possession Marcus has demanded, handing him the keys to his fabricated kingdom without a single objection or countermotion. It looks like a total, unconditional surrender. It looks like the Titan has finally broken under the crushing weight of the corporate lawyers and the church's excommunication. The scene sharply cuts to the suburban house Nia just signed away. Bass-heavy music vibrates through the expensive windows. Marcus and Bradley are hosting a massive victory celebration, popping bottles of imported champagne that cost more than their monthly mortgage payments. The living room is packed with Mama Jenkins's church friends, Tasha's boutique investors, and Valerie's high society sycophants. Marcus stands on the hearth of the stone fireplace, his face flushed with alcohol and unearned triumph. He raises his glass loudly, boasting to the room about how easily he crushed the dead weight holding him back. He spins a triumphant, entirely fabricated narrative of a powerful man who finally took out the trash and reclaimed his life from a greedy opportunist. Beside him, Valerie laughs, raising her left hand to catch the chandelier light. A flawless 6-carat emerald-cut diamond rests on her ring finger, blinding everyone in its vicinity. Across the room, Bradley is holding court by the kitchen island. He is loudly pitching his crypto strategies to anyone who will listen, entirely convinced that his proximity to Valerie's wealthy circle has instantly erased his massive debts. He clinks his glass against Tasha's, grinning like a man who just conquered Wall Street. They are intoxicated by their own perceived brilliance, entirely certain that they have successfully outmaneuvered the smartest woman they will ever meet. They believe the signed divorce papers are proof of their superior intellect. The camera violently snaps back to the quiet, ice-cold blue light of the downtown suite. The Steadicam resumes its fluid orbit around Nia, who is now seated before a glowing array of 3 curved monitors. The signed divorce papers are shoved carelessly into a manila envelope ready for the courier. They were never the main event. They were chum thrown to a pack of starving, distracted dogs. By giving Marcus the house and the cars, she completely bypassed the grueling discovery phase of the divorce. She gave their expensive lawyers exactly what they wanted, so they would stop looking at the digital footprint she left behind. Her fingers fly across the mechanical keyboard with terrifying speed and precision. Lines of encrypted code reflect across her glasses. She is not a scorned wife fighting over a checking account. She is a top-tier crisis manager who built her empire by untangling the catastrophic financial messes of international billionaires. Accessing her husband's mid-level corporate network is barely a warm-up. On the left monitor, she effortlessly bypasses the crude 2-factor authentication of Marcus's corporate server. She dives straight into the regional expense ledgers. She knows Marcus better than he knows himself. She knows his ego is infinitely larger than his paycheck. There is absolutely no mathematical way a mid-level manager could afford Valerie's 6-carat diamond ring without completely bankrupting himself. The progress bar flashes green as she downloads a heavily concealed offshore routing file. The numbers do not lie. Marcus did not buy the ring with savings. He siphoned $750,000 from a blind corporate slush fund routing the stolen money through 3 different shell vendors before wiring it directly to a private jeweler in Antwerp. He embezzled from his own company to buy an engagement ring for a billionaire heiress. Nia downloads the invoices, the routing numbers, and the forged vendor approvals. She compiles it all into a single, devastating encrypted folder. Marcus thinks he won a house, but he has actually bought himself a 10-year federal prison sentence for severe corporate fraud. Nia's eyes flick to the right monitor. It is Bradley's turn. Her fingers dance across the keys, pulling up the blockchain ledgers associated with Bradley's decentralized startup. Bradley parades around calling himself a crypto genius, but Nia easily strips away the layers of his pathetic digital disguise. She traces the massive influx of unregulated capital saving his portfolio. It is not investment revenue, it is dirty money. Bradley is running a digital washing machine. He is taking illicit cash from the violent Southside creditors he owes, filtering it through his crypto tokens to scrub the origin and paying it back as clean, untraceable dividends. He is actively laundering money for organized crime syndicates to keep them from breaking his legs. Nia captures the transaction, hashes the wallet addresses and the communication logs between Bradley and his very dangerous partners. She secures federal felony number 2, dragging the files into another heavily encrypted folder. The camera pushes in close again, holding tight on Nia's face. The cool blue light illuminates the faint, triumphant curve of her lips. She has surrendered the plastic trophies. She has let them take the house, the cars, and the fake community validation. They are busy drinking champagne and planning their grand futures, completely oblivious to the fact that they are dancing on a live landmine. Nia highlights the 2 encrypted dossiers on her desktop. One contains Marcus's complete professional and legal destruction. The other contains Bradley's absolute ruin. She is not going to use expensive lawyers to fight a messy, drawn-out divorce in family court. She is going to bypass the civil system entirely and hand them directly to the federal authorities. She leans back in her ergonomic chair, taking a slow sip of black coffee. The fake surrender is complete. The trap is perfectly primed. They think they buried her, but they only succeeded in handing her the shovels to dig their own graves. A very slow dolly. In begins to track across the dark, silent expanse of the executive suite. The camera glides with a predatory smoothness, slowly closing the distance to the modern ethanol fireplace set into the far wall. The cool blue glow of the computer monitors has faded into the background. Now the warm, mesmerizing dance of the flames casts sharp, flickering shadows across the right side of Nia's face, leaving the left side bathed in absolute darkness. She sits in a high-backed leather chair, her expression carved from obsidian, staring unblinking into the fire. She possesses the terrifying regal poise of a predator, perfectly positioned in the tall grass, simply waiting for the wind to change. The profound silence of the room is suddenly pierced by the sharp, secure trill of a private encrypted mobile phone resting on the glass side table. It is a number known only to 3 people on the planet. Nia does not flinch. She slowly turns her head, the firelight catching the sharp contour of her jawline, and answers the call. The voice on the other end is trembling, thick with the weight of catastrophic news. It is the chief of staff for Arthur Sterling, the billionaire patriarch and majority shareholder of Sterling Global Industries. Arthur is dead. The aggressive, highly classified pancreatic cancer he had been battling in total secrecy has finally claimed his life. Nia lowers the phone. She allows herself exactly 3 seconds of silence to honor a man who was not just her most powerful client, but a mentor who understood the brutal, unforgiving mechanics of power just as well as she did. Miles away in a sprawling, multi-million-dollar penthouse overlooking the city, a very different kind of mourning is taking place. Valerie Sterling has just received the same news. The camera cuts to her violently pacing across her imported Persian rugs. There are no tears. There is no grief for the man who gave her everything. There is only the manic, wide-eyed adrenaline of unadulterated greed. Valerie is a hurricane of toxic entitlement. Her hands shake slightly, a physical tell of the heavy amphetamine addiction she has desperately tried to hide from the public eye. She aggressively taps at her phone, barking frantic orders to her legal team and sycophantic board members. She is already orchestrating the hostile takeover of her father's empire. She is planning the press conferences, calculating the liquidation of assets she considers boring, and preparing to crown herself the undisputed queen of Sterling Global. Marcus stands right beside her, pouring her a glass of scotch, playing the role of the devoted, supportive king consort. He looks at Valerie with a pathetic, hungry devotion. He believes he has hit the ultimate jackpot. He believes he has successfully traded a hardworking, self-made wife for a billionaire heiress, securing a lifetime of unimaginable wealth and effortless power. They are both completely intoxicated by their own delusions of grandeur. They believe the throne is empty and waiting. They do not know that Arthur Sterling saw right through them. The camera cuts back to Nia, the slow dolly. In finally coming to a halt just inches from her face, the firelight flickers in her dark eyes as she reaches into the inner pocket of her crimson blazer. Arthur Sterling loved his daughter, but he was not a fool. He was a titan of industry who had spent 40 years building a global conglomerate, and he knew exactly what Valerie was. He knew about the secret rehab stints in Switzerland. He knew about the covered-up DU is the erratic drug-fueled outbursts and the trail of destroyed relationships she left in her wake. He knew that his daughter was a functional addict with the impulse control of a reckless child. Handing her the keys to his empire would be a death sentence for the company and for the thousands of employees who depended on it. Arthur had spent the last 2 years quietly observing Valerie's descent, and he had spent the last 6 months observing Marcus. He saw Marcus for exactly what he was: a weak, opportunistic parasite, eager to feed off his daughter's inherited wealth. Arthur knew Valerie was utterly incapable of leading, and he knew Marcus would eagerly help her drive the company directly into the ground, as long as his own pockets were lined in the process. So the billionaire patriarch made a different arrangement. He bypassed his bloodline entirely and put his legacy in the hands of the only person he trusted to protect it. Nia pulls her hand from her pocket. She opens her palm under the warm light of the fire. Resting in the center of her hand is a heavy, centuries-old, solid gold signet ring bearing the Sterling family crest. It is not just a piece of jewelry. It is a legendary artifact within the highest echelons of the financial world. The ring houses a custom microscopic encrypted chip. Before his death, Arthur executed a shadow trust. It is a bulletproof, legally impenetrable document that effectively bypasses the standard probate process. He placed his entire controlling stake of Sterling Global Industries, 72% of the voting shares, into a blind trust. Valerie's name is nowhere on the document. She has been completely disinherited from the voting structure, relegated to a heavily restricted monthly allowance contingent on clean drug tests. The true power of the Sterling Empire, the absolute authority to hire, fire, liquidate, and command the board of directors, was transferred to a single, irrevocable executor. Nia holds the heavy gold ring up to the firelight. She is the executor. She does not just hold the secrets of Marcus's embezzlement and Bradley's money laundering. She literally owns the ground Marcus and Valerie are currently standing on. Marcus divorced Nia because he wanted to marry into the Sterling fortune. He threw away a decade of marriage, weaponized his family against her, and launched a vicious smear campaign, all to secure a seat beside the billionaire heiress. The sheer poetic brilliance of the trap is breathtaking. Marcus has traded everything he had to become a kept man, completely unaware that his ex-wife is now the absolute dictator of his new kingdom. Valerie is currently screaming at lawyers, demanding they prepare the executive boardroom for her coronation tomorrow morning. She is picking out the designer suit she will wear to announce her ascension as CEO. She has no idea that the chair she intends to sit in belongs to Nia. Nia slowly slides the heavy gold Sterling signet ring onto her right index finger. It fits perfectly. The weight of it is grounding. She picks up her encrypted phone and dials a private number for the Sterling Global Board of Directors. The line clicks open immediately. "This is Nia Jenkins," she says, her voice as smooth and cold as a frozen lake. "Initiate Protocol Vanguard. The chairman has passed. The Shadow Trust is now active. I want a full mandatory assembly of the executive board tomorrow morning at 9 sharp. Lock down all executive access cards immediately. No one enters the building without my explicit authorization. She pauses, the amber firelight catching the sharp, predatory gleam in her eyes. And make sure Valerie Sterling's access is permanently revoked. If she attempts to enter the building, security is to escort her off the premises. The voice on the other end confirms the orders with fearful, immediate obedience. Naya terminates the call. She looks down at the thick stack of divorce papers she signed earlier that evening. She had given Marcus the house. She had given him the cars. She had given him the illusion of total victory. She had let him feel like a giant so that the fall would utterly shatter him. Tomorrow morning, Marcus and Valerie will walk up to the glass doors of Sterling Global Industries expecting a royal welcome. They will expect bowing executives and a crown of unlimited wealth. Instead, they will find their keycards deactivated. They will find armed security guards barring their path. And when the glass doors finally open, they will not see a welcoming committee. They will see the woman they thought they had buried wearing the Sterling signet ring, holding the absolute power to destroy them both with a single snap of her fingers. Nia leans back in her chair, letting the warmth of the fire wash over her. The game of survival is over. The execution has begun. The camera transitions into a slow, deliberate, horizontal tracking shot gliding alongside the sleek edge of the glass desk. Nia stands up, moving with a fluid, lethal grace. She walks over to a minimalist crystal decanter resting on a polished obsidian sideboard. The rich amber liquid catches the flickering firelight as she pours herself a generous measure of vintage bourbon. She brings the heavy crystal glass to her lips, and a slow, razor-sharp smirk finally breaks the icy composure of her face. The taste of absolute victory is already sweet, but the preparation is where she truly thrives. She turns away from the fire and walks toward a set of heavy soundproof double doors at the far end of the executive suite. She presses her thumb to the biometric scanner beside the frame. The heavy oak doors slide open with a soft pneumatic hiss, revealing an adjoining private medical suite. The room is bathed in dim, warm light, dominated by state-of-the-art medical monitoring equipment. A figure lies resting in the center of the room, their identity completely obscured by the shadows and the carefully angled tracking shot. The rhythmic, steady beep of a heart monitor confirms they are alive and stable. This is Nia's most closely guarded secret, a hidden variable that Marcus, Valerie, and the entire Sterling board are completely oblivious to. Nia approaches the bed with a gentleness that contrasts sharply with her corporate ruthlessness. She adjusts the heavy cashmere blanket, her eyes softening for a fraction of a second. "Rest now," Nia whispers into the quiet room. "The board is set. They swallowed the bait whole. Tomorrow we take back everything they stole from you." The figure stirs slightly but remains silent. Nia steps back, the cold, calculating mask instantly snapping back into place. She turns and exits the room, the heavy doors sealing shut behind her, locking the secret away. She returns to her command center. The 3 curved monitors are now split into a dozen encrypted video feeds. Waiting in absolute silence on the screens is a terrifying assembly of raw corporate power. This is Nia's personal wrecking crew. Forensic auditors who can trace a single dirty dollar through a maze of international shell companies, ex-intelligence operatives turned private investigators, cybersecurity mercenaries who dismantle firewalls for sport. They are the invisible iron hand Nia uses to crush empires, and tonight, their crosshairs are locked entirely on the Jenkins family. Nia takes a sip of her bourbon and sets the glass down. Her voice rings out in the quiet room, echoing through the encrypted feeds. "Gentlemen, the containment phase is officially over," she commands. "It is time to suffocate them. We are initiating a total, irreversible financial lockdown." On the far left screen, a man in a crisp charcoal suit nods. He is the lead auditor, the man who has spent the last 48 hours dissecting Marcus's pathetic attempt at embezzlement. Marcus Jenkins believes he has successfully hidden $750,000 in a blind offshore account. Nia continues, her eyes tracking the data scrolling across the screen. I want that illusion shattered before he wakes up tomorrow. Freeze the routing channels. Alert the private jeweler in Antwerp that the funds used to purchase Valerie Sterling's engagement ring were stolen from corporate ledgers. Flag the transaction as international wire fraud. When Marcus attempts to use his corporate platinum cards to pay for his victory champagne tomorrow morning, I want them immediately declined. I want his personal accounts flagged for suspicious activity. Cut his credit limit to absolute zero. By the time the sun rises, I want Marcus Jenkins to realize he cannot even afford to buy a cup of coffee without my permission. The auditor nods once his fingers already flying across his own keyboard to execute the kill order. Naya shifts her gaze to the right monitor, addressing a woman sitting in a darkened room, illuminated only by the glow of server racks. She is the lead cybersecurity operative, the architect of Bradley's impending doom. Bradley Jenkins has spent the last week celebrating his genius, Nia says, a note of pure disgust creeping into her flawless tone. He thinks laundering cartel money through decentralized crypto tokens makes him untouchable. He thinks he is a shark, but he is just a guppy swimming in a bloodbath. Shut down his washing machine. The operative smirks. Consider the digital wallets frozen, she replies. He is currently holding $2 million of unregulated cash for the Southside syndicates. He has absolutely no access to the decryption keys. Nia nods slowly, the firelight catching the heavy sterling signet ring on her finger. Excellent. Now initiate the secondary protocol. I want an anonymous, untraceable message sent directly to Bradley's primary loan sharks. Send them his exact portfolio status. Let them know their money is locked, the tokens are frozen, and Bradley Jenkins is completely insolvent. Let them know he was planning to use their funds to finance his own luxury lifestyle. The implications of the order are brutal and absolute. Nia is not just taking Bradley's money, she is stripping away his protection and throwing him directly to the wolves. When those violent creditors realize Bradley has frozen their capital, they will not send process servers or lawyers. They will send enforcers. Bradley will wake up tomorrow realizing he is not a tech millionaire. He is a dead man, walking hunted by the very people he tried to outsmart. Finally, Nia turns her attention to the center monitor, addressing a man with cold, calculating eyes. He is the head of her private intelligence firm, the man responsible for tracking every move Mama Jenkins and Tasha have made over the past week. My mother-in-law and my esteemed sister-in-law have spent the last 72 hours launching a highly coordinated social assassination against me, Nia says, her voice dropping to a dangerous, icy whisper. They have weaponized the church. They have weaponized their community. They believe public perception is reality. They believe reputation is armor. She leans forward, resting her hands on the glass desk. Strip them of it. Release the church financial audits I secured last month. Send them anonymously to the entire congregation, the church elders, and the local press. Highlight the exact paragraphs showing Mama Jenkins diverting the charity fund tithes directly into Tasha's failing boutique. Expose the fraudulent loan applications Tasha filed using the church's tax-exempt status. They want to preach about righteousness and wicked women. Let the congregation see exactly who has been stealing from the collection plate. The operatives confirm their directives in unison. The trap is no longer just set. It has been violently sprung. The doors are locked, the oxygen is being sucked out of the room, and the Jenkins family is still dancing blindly in the dark. Nia terminates the video feed. The monitors blink back to the cool, clinical blue light illuminating the dark suite. She picks up her glass of bourbon and walks back toward the crackling fireplace. She has completely dismantled her enemies without shedding a single tear, raising her voice, or stepping foot in a courtroom. She has weaponized their own greed, their own pride, and their own profound stupidity against them. They wanted to destroy her, to leave her with nothing to build their pathetic empires on the ashes of her hard work. Instead, they have handed her the matches. Nia stares into the flames, the heavy gold ring catching the light. Tomorrow morning, the sun will rise on a completely different world. The Jenkins family will wake up to the devastating, inescapable reality that they have not conquered a vulnerable housewife. They have declared war on an apex predator and the hunt has only just begun. The camera pulls back from the dying embers of the fireplace, transitioning smoothly into a tight over-the-shoulder shot, peering directly down at Nia's glowing smartphone screen. The notifications are stacking up rapidly, a relentless digital barrage of arrogance and unearned confidence. It is a highly stylized animated VIP invitation, dripping in digital gold confetti. The event is the high society wedding of Marcus's cousin Chloe. What was originally supposed to be a modest backyard family gathering has been aggressively hijacked. Valerie, desperate to buy the Jenkins family's blind loyalty and cement her new status as their billionaire savior, has completely bankrolled the event, upgrading it to a multi-million-dollar extravaganza at the city's most exclusive historic country club. Marcus and Valerie deliberately added Nia to the VIP guest list. It is a calculated, deeply malicious move. They absolutely do not want her there. They want her to receive the invitation, realize how completely outclassed she is, and shrink away into the shadows. They want her to choke on the knowledge that Valerie can instantly provide the life Nia supposedly never could. The text messages accompanying the invite confirm their toxic intentions. Tasha's name pops up on the screen, followed by a string of laughing emojis. Just making sure you got the invite. Valerie flew in white orchids from Holland for the centerpieces. Do not bother showing up. You literally cannot afford to breathe the air in this venue. A second later, Bradley chimes in on the group chat. Heard you got locked out of the house and signed the papers. Tough break. We are popping vintage Dom Perignon tonight to celebrate the new power couple. Stay in your lane, Nia. You are socially unfit for this tax bracket. The camera holds steady on the glowing screen. Nia does not block the numbers. She does not throw the phone across the room in a fit of rage. Her perfectly manicured thumb hovers over the screen for a fraction of a second before gracefully tapping the response button. She types a single, devastatingly simple reply. RSVP confirmed. See you tonight. She locks the screen and tosses the phone onto the glass desk. The time for operating in the shadows is over. She has dismantled their financial foundations, cut off their supply lines, and positioned her explosive evidence perfectly. Now she is going to walk right through their front door and watch the castle collapse around them. The camera tracking shot resumes following Nia as she glides into the master bedroom's expansive, custom-built walk-in closet. She bypasses the conservative, neutral-toned business suits she always wore to appease Marcus's fragile ego. Those clothes belong to a woman who made herself small to make a mediocre man feel large. That woman no longer exists. Nia reaches the back of the closet and selects a heavy garment bag. She unzips it to reveal a breathtaking floor-length gown woven from midnight green silk. The fabric catches the ambient light, shimmering like deep, dangerous water. It is a masterpiece of high-fashion armor, featuring a plunging architectural neckline and a daring thigh-high slit. It is not a dress meant for a scorned, grieving ex-wife. It is the uniform of a conqueror. She dresses with meticulous, unhurried precision. She applies a bold, dark crimson lipstick that contrasts sharply with her flawless skin. She opens a velvet jewelry box and completely ignores the modest pearl necklace Marcus once bought her. Instead, she fastens a stunning vintage diamond collar around her neck, a piece that radiates cold, undeniable power. Finally, she picks up the heavy, solid gold sterling signet ring. She slides it onto her right index finger. The gold feels warm against her skin, a physical manifestation of the absolute corporate supremacy she now wields. She looks at her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling mirror. She is breathtaking. She is terrifying. She is ready. The scene abruptly shifts to the sprawling, manicured grounds of the elite country club. The sun is just beginning to set, casting long golden shadows across the valet stand and the grand marble staircase leading up to the ballroom. The air is thick with the sound of a live string quartet and the endless clinking of crystal flutes. The Jenkins family is holding court on the sprawling outdoor terrace, completely intoxicated by their borrowed wealth. Mama Jenkins is wearing an absurdly oversized feathered hat, loudly boasting to the other guests about her son's brilliant new fiancé. She acts as if she personally financed the entire evening, pointing out the imported floral arrangements and the top-shelf catering with obnoxious, unearned pride. She is reveling in the illusion of high society. Valerie stands at the center of the terrace, clinging tightly to Marcus's arm. She is wearing a blindingly loud, silver-sequined dress that practically screams for attention. She keeps flashing her massive engagement ring, laughing too loudly, her eyes darting around with the frantic, restless energy of someone desperate for constant validation. Marcus stands beside her, his chest puffed out, holding a cigar. He clearly does not know how to smoke properly. He is playing the role of the wealthy patriarch, completely oblivious to the fact that his corporate credit cards have already begun declining at the open bar inside. Bradley is pacing near the massive champagne fountain, sweating profusely despite the cool evening breeze. His phone is gripped tightly in his hand. The color has completely drained from his face. The anonymous message from the violent Southside creditors hit his inbox 20 minutes ago. He knows his crypto wallets are frozen. He knows he is utterly ruined, but he is desperately trying to smile, terrified that if he shows any fear, the fragile illusion will shatter before he can figure out a way to run. Tasha is busy live streaming the event to her meager social media following, posing with Valerie, and bragging about her elite connections to the camera. She is blissfully unaware that her boutique's fraudulent tax records are currently dominating the inbox of the local district attorney and the state tax board. Suddenly, the low, powerful purr of a custom engine cuts through the polite chatter of the terrace. A sleek, midnight black armored Maybach glides up the circular driveway, entirely bypassing the line of luxury sedans waiting for the valet. The sheer imposing presence of the vehicle forces the attendants to scramble to attention. The string quartet falters for a moment. The conversation on the terrace begins to die down as heads turn toward the grand entrance. Valerie scowls, clearly annoyed that someone has managed to steal her spotlight. Marcus squints against the setting sun, trying to recognize which billionaire friend of Arthur Sterling just arrived. The uniformed driver steps out, walks around the pristine vehicle with military precision, and opens the rear passenger door. A pair of strappy diamond-encrusted stilettos step onto the pavement. Nia emerges from the Maybach. The evening breeze catches the heavy midnight green silk of her gown, making it ripple elegantly around her legs. The diamonds at her throat catch the setting sun, flashing with blinding brilliance. She does not look down. She does not hesitate. She begins her ascent up the wide marble staircase. The entire terrace falls dead silent. The clinking of glasses stops completely. Mama Jenkins's jaw drops, her extravagant feathered hat suddenly looking incredibly foolish and small. Tasha slowly lowers her phone, her live stream entirely forgotten, her eyes wide with unadulterated shock. Marcus physically recoils. The unlit cigar slips from his trembling fingers and lands on the pristine marble floor. He stares at the woman he discarded, utterly paralyzed. He expected a broken, tearful shell of a woman begging for scraps at the service entrance. He is looking at an empress who looks like she just bought the entire continent. Valerie's fake rehearsed smile vanishes. Her eyes dart nervously, sizing up the threat before catching a glimpse of Nia's right hand. The setting sun gleams directly off the heavy gold signet ring resting on Nia's index finger. For a fraction of a second, profound confusion registers on the heiress's face, a fleeting, terrifying question of why her late father's legendary ring is currently on the hand of Marcus's ex-wife. Nia reaches the top of the stairs. The crowd automatically parts for her, physically intimidated by the sheer, suffocating aura of dominance she projects. She walks directly toward the center of the terrace where the Jenkins family stands frozen. She does not sneer. She does not gloat. She simply looks at them with the calm, chilling pity of a predator observing cornered prey. The execution has officially moved into the light. The Steadicam smoothly transitions into a slow, deliberate orbit shot. It circles Nia 360 degrees as she steps fully onto the terrace, capturing the awe and absolute silence of the surrounding guests. The midnight green silk of her gown flows around her like liquid shadow. The vintage diamond collar catches the ambient light, casting sharp reflections across the faces of the stunned crowd. She is the undeniable center of gravity in a room full of people who spend their entire lives trying to be noticed. Marcus finally snaps out of his paralysis. The sheer, suffocating presence of his ex-wife triggers a violent defense mechanism within his fragile ego. Beside him, Valerie's face contorts with sudden, vicious insecurity. Her silver sequined dress, which seemed so glamorous moments ago, now looks incredibly loud and desperately cheap next to Nia's effortless architectural elegance. Valerie aggressively yanks Marcus's arm, pulling him forward to intercept the threat. They march across the terrace to block Nia's path, moving with the chaotic, uncoordinated energy of two people who have already lost control of the situation. Bradley swaggers up right behind them, swirling the melting ice in his cocktail glass. He wears the infuriating, condescending smirk of an arrogant tech bro who mistakenly believes he is the smartest man in the room. Mama Jenkins waddles over to flank her sons, her massive feathered hat bobbing aggressively as her face twists into a bitter, deeply judgmental sneer. They form a hostile barricade entirely determined to remind Nia of her supposedly inferior place. "I see you decided to max out your last remaining credit card just to make an entrance," Marcus says, his voice dripping with forced condescension. Renting a Maybach and some fake diamonds does not change the fact that you have absolutely nothing left, Nia. It just makes you look pathetic. Valerie lets out a sharp, high-pitched laugh, looking around to make sure the other guests are watching. "Honestly, it is beyond embarrassing," she sneers, looking Nia up and down with exaggerated disgust. "Did you come here to beg for your alimony back because Marcus already signed the papers? You are cut off. You literally do not belong in this zip code anymore." Mama Jenkins aggressively fans herself, shaking her head as if looking at a tragic accident. "Lord have mercy, a bitter woman is a terrible sight to behold," she declares loudly. "You could not keep a good man, so now you want to come and ruin a blessed family celebration. You should be ashamed to show your face in front of polite society." Bradley takes a slow sip of his drink, chuckling as he leans in close. "Come on, Mama, let her stay," he mocks, his voice dripping with unearned superiority. "It is a good learning experience for her. She gets to see what real wealth looks like. Though I am honestly shocked the gate guards let you through without running a full background check. Do you even know which fork to use for the salad course, Nia?" Nia does not flinch. She does not defend herself. She stands perfectly still, letting their toxic insults wash over her like rain against a titanium vault. She maintains her icy, unbroken eye contact with Marcus. The silence stretches, growing increasingly uncomfortable for everyone except her. Her utter refusal to react visibly unnerves them. Marcus, desperate to break her composure and reclaim his perceived dominance, decides to escalate. He wants an audience. He wants to publicly humiliate the woman who made him feel inadequate for 10 years. He takes a step forward and raises his voice deliberately, projecting his words so that the entire terrace, including several high-ranking executives from Sterling Global who are attending as Valerie's guests, can hear every single word. "Listen to me very carefully, because I am only going to say this once." Marcus booms, his voice echoing over the quiet string quartet. "You are completely delusional. You signed away the house, you signed away the accounts, and you walked away because you finally realized you could never compete in my world. I am marrying the future CEO of Sterling Global Industries. I am stepping into a level of power you cannot even begin to comprehend. So take your rented dress and your rented car and leave before I have security throw you out on the street where you belong." He points a trembling finger toward the exit, breathing heavily, entirely satisfied with his grand public declaration. He believes he has just delivered the final crushing blow. He looks around the terrace, expecting nods of approval and whispers of support from the wealthy guests. Nia allows his voice to fade into the cool evening air. She waits until the silence is absolute. She does not raise her voice to match his. She does not need to. True power never has to shout. When she finally speaks, her tone is quiet, smooth, and lethal, forcing everyone on the terrace to lean in with breathless anticipation. "You always did have a terrible habit of celebrating before the ink was dry," Marcus, Nia says, her voice slicing through the tension like a scalpel. "You stand here bragging about a kingdom you do not own, funded by money. You do not have standing beside a woman who has absolutely no idea that her own father considered her an incompetent liability. Valerie's face drains of color. "How dare you speak about my father?" she hisses. Stepping forward, her hands balled into tight fists. "My father built an empire and it belongs to me." Nia slowly shifts her gaze to Valerie. The cold obsidian depths of her eyes strip away the heiress's bravado in an instant. "Your father built an empire," Nia corrects her, her voice ringing with absolute terrifying authority. "But he knew exactly what you were. He knew about the hidden rehab stints. He knew about the erratic behavior. And he knew that handing you the keys to his legacy would be a catastrophic mistake. He loved you, Valerie, but he did not trust you. And he certainly did not trust the parasitic mid-level manager you decided to attach yourself to." Marcus steps in front of Valerie, his face flushing dark red with rage. "Shut your mouth," he commands, his voice shaking. "You know absolutely nothing about Sterling Global. You are a glorified accountant." Nia's lips curve into a slow, chilling smile. She raises her right hand, placing it delicately against her collarbone. The setting sun catches the heavy, solid gold signet ring on her index finger, illuminating the unmistakable centuries-old Sterling family crest. Valerie stops breathing. Her eyes lock onto the gold ring, her pupils dilating in pure, unadulterated horror. She recognizes it immediately. It is the ring her father never took off. The ring he swore would only be passed down to the true guardian of his legacy. "I know exactly how Sterling Global operates," Marcus Nia whispers, stepping into his personal space. "Because as of 6 hours ago, when Arthur Sterling's Shadow Trust was officially activated, I became the sole irrevocable executor of his entire controlling stake. I do not just know about this company, I own it. And by extension, I own you." The color completely vanishes from Marcus's face. He stares at the ring, the blood rushing in his ears, deafening him to the gasps of the surrounding guests. He looks from the ring to Nia's face, and in that agonizing, breathless second, the terrible reality of his situation finally crashes down upon him. He realizes he has not outsmarted his ex-wife. He has walked willingly into a flawlessly executed slaughter. The camera snaps into a tight, rapid shot, reverse shot sequence, alternating between the manic, unraveling arrogance on Marcus's face and the absolute glacial stillness of Nia's eyes. For 3 agonizing seconds, Marcus stares at the heavy gold crest on her finger. His brain hits a solid wall of pure cognitive dissonance. The reality of what that ring signifies is too massive, too catastrophic for his fragile ego to process. Confronted with his own impending doom, his mind violently rejects the truth. Denial floods his system, manifesting as a sudden, harsh bark of laughter that cuts through the dead silence of the country club terrace. He steps forward, puffing his chest out desperately, trying to physically tower over her. The camera shoots him from a low angle, emphasizing his aggressive posturing, then immediately snaps back to a high-angle shot over his shoulder, showing Nia entirely unbothered, her posture perfectly aligned. Marcus points a trembling, accusatory finger at the signet ring. "Nia, look at you," Marcus sneers, his voice escalating into a frantic theatrical pitch designed for the surrounding audience. "You are trying so hard to look rich to cover up your pathetic reality. You actually went out and rented a fake ring and a flashy car just to crash a party where you are not wanted. Do you see how desperate this makes you look? You are so obsessed with my success that you are standing here playing dress-up to hide your own miserable life." He takes another step closer, his face twisting into a mask of pure, unadulterated cruelty. He wants to hurt her. He needs to reduce her back to the subservient woman he thought he controlled. He weaponizes his voice, making sure every high society guest, every Sterling Global executive, and every member of his own toxic family can hear him clearly. "Honestly, kicking you out of that house on Christmas Eve was the absolute best decision of my entire life," Marcus declares, a vicious, triumphant smile spreading across his face. "I finally cut the dead weight. Look at where I am now. Look at the woman standing beside me. I am a vice president at Sterling Global Industries. I hold real power. I have a future. And you will always just be a barren, failed woman who could not even give me a single child, let alone build an empire. The sheer brutality of the insult sends a collective audible shockwave through the eavesdropping guests. The string quartet, which had been softly tuning their instruments, goes completely dead. The silence on the terrace is absolute, heavy and suffocating. Even Mama Jenkins and Bradley momentarily stiffen at the public viciousness of the attack, though Mama Jenkins quickly recovers, nodding her feathered hat in silent agreement. The camera holds steady on Nia. She does not gasp. She does not physically recoil. The insult, specifically engineered to shatter her deepest vulnerabilities, simply ricochets off her titanium composure. She spent years mourning the children they could not have, carrying the agonizing weight of those failed IVF treatments, while Marcus secretly funneled their medical funds to his mistresses. His words do not hurt her anymore. They simply eradicate any lingering shred of mercy she might have held for him. Valerie, emboldened by Marcus's aggressive delusion, steps up to join the verbal execution. She crosses her arms, her silver sequined dress, catching the patio lights as she glares at Nia with absolute aristocratic disdain. She is a woman who has never been told no, entirely convinced that her inherited wealth makes her untouchable. I do not know what kind of delusional fantasy you are living in, Valerie says, her voice echoing with toxic elitism. But my father would never hand his legacy to a nobody from the suburbs. You do not have the pedigree, you do not have the education, and you certainly do not have the class to even stand on this terrace. You have no right to breathe the same air as us, let alone stand at the same table. You are a fraud. You are a pathetic, scorned ex-wife trying to cause a scene at a high society event where you fundamentally do not belong. Valerie steps closer to Marcus, possessively wrapping her arm around his waist, sneering at Nia. Security is already on their way, Valerie continues, her tone dripping with venom. You are going to be escorted out in handcuffs, and tomorrow morning my legal team is going to bury you in defamation suits until you are living in a cardboard box on the street. Nia listens to the stereo barrage of insults with the detached clinical fascination of a scientist observing rodents navigating a maze. The camera switches back to the tight shot, reverse shot, emphasizing the massive disparity in their emotional states. Marcus and Valerie are breathing heavily, their faces flushed with adrenaline and malice, absolutely certain they have won the war of words. Nia is a statue carved from midnight green silk and diamonds. She does not defend her pedigree. She does not argue about the authenticity of the solid gold signet ring on her right hand. She does not address the incredibly cruel remarks about her fertility. She simply lifts her left arm with fluid, deliberate grace. She turns her wrist slightly, allowing the ambient patio lighting to catch the face of her diamond-encrusted watch. The camera pushes in for an extreme close-up on the timepiece. The sleek second hand sweeps methodically across the dial. It is exactly 8:59 in the evening. Nia lowers her wrist and meets Marcus's manic, bloodshot eyes. She tilts her head slightly, the vintage diamonds at her throat flashing a brilliant icy white. She looks at him with profound, chilling pity. You always love the sound of your own voice, Marcus, Nia says, her tone conversational, completely unbothered by his screaming. You love the grand speeches. You love the performance of power. But you never actually understood how power works. Power does not need to shout. Power does not need to boast about a title it had to sleep with someone to get. She takes a slow, deliberate step forward. The sheer intensity of her presence forces Marcus and Valerie to subconsciously take a half step back, their bodies betraying the fear their mouths refuse to acknowledge. You called me a barren failure? Nia continues, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carries across the entire breathless terrace, pinning everyone to their current positions. You bragged about throwing me out in the cold. You thought my silence over the past month was weakness. You thought my compliance with the divorce settlement was surrender. You are a remarkably simple man, Marcus. You only see what is placed directly in front of your face. You never bother to look at the shadows. She raises her left wrist one more time. The camera tracks her movement, focusing on her calm, unblinking eyes. The second hand sweeps past the 12. It is exactly 9 o'clock. Right on schedule, she murmurs. She does not look at Marcus anymore. She looks past him, her eyes fixing on the grand glass doors leading into the country club's main ballroom. The heavy brass handles of the double doors turn simultaneously. The doors swing inward. Instantly, the camera shifts into a dramatic, high-speed, slow-motion sequence. The chaotic ambient noise of the terrace, the nervous murmurs of the crowd, and the rustling of the wind all drop away into a muffled, distant hum. A tiny figure bursts through the threshold. It is a 5-year-old girl. She is breathtaking, moving with the uninhibited, joyful energy of a child who knows she is entirely safe. She is dressed in a flawless, custom-tailored miniature ball gown, woven from the exact same midnight green silk as Nia's dress. She looks like a perfect little angel, a miniature empress in training. Her tiny silver shoes tap silently against the marble in the slowed-down reality, and her dark, beautiful curls are pinned back with delicate, undeniable diamonds. Behind her, emerging from the shadows of the ballroom, is an imposing wall of men in tailored black suits. They are not standard country club security. They are elite, top-tier executive protection moving with lethal, synchronized precision. They do not try to stop the little girl. They do not chase her. Instead, they fan out, flanking the doorway and forming a protective corridor, their eyes scanning the terrace for threats. They are her personal escort. The slow motion holds steady, capturing the collective real-time shock rippling through the Jenkins family. Mama Jenkins's jaw hangs slack. Bradley lowers his drink, his smug smirk completely wiped away. Valerie stares, her eyes wide frantically, trying to process the visual information. Zuri spots Nia. Her face breaks into an incandescent, pure smile. She sprints across the pristine marble floor. Nia does not hesitate. She drops gracefully to one knee, completely ignoring the expensive silk of her gown as it pools onto the floor. She opens her arms wide. The cold, predatory demeanor she weaponized against the Jenkins family vanishes in a fraction of a second. It is replaced by a fierce, overwhelming, radiant maternal love. Zuri crashes into her embrace. The audio violently snaps back to real time. Mommy Zuri's bright, joyful voice rings out crystal clear and piercing through the dead silence of the country club. She throws her little arms around Nia's neck, burying her face in the midnight green silk. Nia wraps her arms tightly around the child, burying her face in Zuri's curls, holding her with a fierce possessiveness that commands the absolute attention of every single person on the terrace. The crowd is paralyzed. The wealthy guests, the Sterling Global executives, the country club staff, they all stand frozen in stunned disbelief. Marcus blinks. He stares at the little girl clinging to the woman he spent a decade trying to break. His mind completely incapable of accepting the reality of his total defeat and the crushing magnitude of what he is witnessing, violently rejects the truth. He cannot process that Nia holds real power. He cannot process the elite security detail. He grasps desperately at the most insulting, demeaning explanation his fragile ego can construct. He breaks the absolute silence with a harsh, barking laugh. It is an ugly sound. It is desperate, hollow, and painfully arrogant. He steps forward, shaking his head, pointing a trembling finger at the child in Nia's arms. "Are you kidding me?" Nia Marcus sneers, his voice dripping with venomous, mocking amusement. "Is this the grand finale? Did you actually go out and adopt a kid just to make yourself look less pathetic tonight?" Nia does not flinch. She stands up smoothly, lifting Zuri effortlessly into her arms. Zuri rests her head on Nia's shoulder, looking at Marcus with the innocent, unbothered curiosity of a child observing a loud, unpleasant animal in a cage. Nia strokes Zuri's back gently, her eyes locking back onto Marcus. She lets him dig his own grave. Marcus takes another step forward, emboldened by the sound of his own voice, completely oblivious to the fact that the Sterling Global executives in the crowd are physically backing away from him. This is beyond sad. Marcus continues, raising his voice so the entire terrace can hear his supposed victory. "You could not give me a child for 10 years. You were a broken, barren woman. So what did you do? You signed the divorce papers, got locked out of the house, and swung by an orphanage on the way here. You rent a flashy dress, you steal a gold ring, and you drag some poor orphan to my engagement party, just to prove you are not a complete failure. He laughs again, looking back at Valerie and his mother, expecting them to join in his mockery. Do you hear this? She is trying to play house to compete with me. Did you hire those rent-a-cops by the hour to make your little prop child look important? Mama Jenkins lets out a sharp, cruel cackle, clapping her hands together. Lord, the desperation is just embarrassing, she shouts, pointing her fan at Nia. Buying a baby will not buy you a husband, honey. You are still just a sad, lonely woman trying to ruin my son's blessed night. Bradley chuckles, shaking his head. Tech money cannot buy you a personality, Nia, but I guess it bought you a quick adoption. Too bad you are still totally unfit for this tax bracket. Marcus turns back to Nia, a vicious, triumphant smile spreading across his face. He thinks he has stripped her bare. He thinks he has humiliated her in front of the city's elite. Take your fake ring, your rented car, and your purchased kid, and get the hell out of my sight before I call the real authorities. Marcus commands, his chest puffed out in a pathetic display of borrowed authority. You are done here. Nia lets the silence stretch. She does not raise her voice. She does not defend herself against the brutal insults regarding her fertility. She simply holds Zuri closer, her face a mask of absolute chilling calm. Valerie, however, is not laughing. She has not laughed once since the doors opened. The camera executes a slow, deliberate push-in on Valerie's face. The blood has completely drained from her cheeks, leaving her skin a sickly, terrifying pale. She is not looking at Nia. She is staring directly at the little girl. She looks at the shape of Zuri's eyes. She looks at the curve of her jaw. She looks at the specific, undeniable shade of her dark curls. Valerie's breath hitches. Her hands begin to tremble uncontrollably. She recognizes the elite security team standing behind Nia. She knows their faces. They are her late father's personal vanguard detail men, who only answer to the absolute head of the Sterling family. But more terrifying than the security team, more terrifying than the signet ring on Nia's finger, is the face of the child. Valerie's mind races, piecing together the fragmented rumors, the unexplained absences of her father over the last 6 years, the massive untraceable withdrawals from the private family accounts. She looks at Zuri and she sees a ghost. She sees the undeniable, unmistakable genetic echo of Arthur Sterling staring back at her. The camera executes a violently fast dolly and snapping the focal length directly onto the faces of Valerie and Marcus. The depth of field compresses, blurring out the rest of the terrace and trapping them in their own sudden, inescapable nightmare. Valerie's jaw trembles. The champagne flute slips from her manicured fingers and shatters violently against the marble floor, but she does not even blink. She is entirely paralyzed by the ghosts of her own catastrophic mistakes. Marcus, entirely oblivious to the monumental shift in the atmosphere, turns to his fiancée. Valerie, what is wrong with you? Call security right now and get this trash off the patio. He barks, his voice still loud, still dripping with that manufactured, arrogant authority. Valerie does not answer. She cannot breathe. From the center of the ballroom, a figure emerges through the grand glass doors, parting the elite vanguard security team. It is Harrison Vance, the chief legal counsel for Sterling Global Industries. A man whose hourly rate could buy the entire country club. He is a silver-haired, sharply suited shark of a lawyer, carrying a heavy leather-bound portfolio stamped with the gold Sterling crest. Marcus recognizes him instantly. A wave of relief washes over the foolish man's face. Mr. Vance, Marcus says, puffing out his chest and stepping forward as if greeting a subordinate. Thank God you are here. My ex-wife is causing a disturbance and harassing the future CEO. Please have your security team remove her. Harrison Vance does not even look at Marcus. He walks right past him, treating the newly minted vice president as if he were a smudge of dirt on the floor. Vance steps directly in front of Nia, clicking the heels of his polished Oxfords together. He lowers his head, executing a deep, profound, and entirely respectful bow. It is a gesture of absolute fealty. Good evening, Madam Chairman Vance, says his voice carrying the deep, resonant authority of the law. He then looks at the little girl resting her head on Nia's shoulder and offers a second, softer bow. And a very good evening to you, Miss Zuri. The collective gasp from the terrace sounds like all the oxygen being sucked out of the atmosphere. Mama Jenkins clutches her chest, staggering backward into Bradley, who has turned the color of wet ash. Marcus stands frozen, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Madam Chairman, he finally chokes out, his voice cracking into a pathetic, high-pitched squeak. What are you talking about? Valerie is the heir. Valerie is the CEO. Nia steps forward, her midnight green gown whispering against the marble. She looks directly at Valerie, bypassing Marcus entirely. Marcus is no longer a threat. He is merely collateral damage. Do you want to tell him? Valerie, Nia asks, her voice a lethal silken purr. Or should I explain to your brand new fiancé exactly what happened 5 years ago in that luxury rehabilitation clinic in Geneva? Valerie lets out a strangled, pathetic sob. She takes a step backward, shaking her head frantically, terrified of the truth being dragged out into the light. I thought so, Nia says, her eyes narrowing with absolute contempt. She turns her gaze back to the crowd, projecting her voice with the flawless, commanding cadence of a true corporate titan. 5 years ago, Valerie Sterling checked into a private clinic to hide a pregnancy brought on by her reckless, drug-fueled lifestyle. The moment she gave birth, she walked out the back door, leaving her newborn daughter behind, so she could return to her yachts and her parties without missing a single season in the Hamptons. She thought she had erased her mistake. She thought her father would never find out. Nia pauses, gently stroking Zuri's dark curls. The little girl simply watches, the strange, loud people completely safe and secure in her mother's arms. But Arthur Sterling knew everything. Nia continues, her words striking Valerie like physical blows. Arthur found the child. He saw a beautiful, innocent girl carrying his bloodline, abandoned by a daughter he already knew was fundamentally unfit to rule. But Arthur was a brilliant strategist. He knew he could not raise a child while fighting terminal cancer. He needed someone strong. He needed someone with an impeccable moral compass and a brilliant financial mind to protect his granddaughter and his empire. Marcus begins to shake violently. The terrifying realization of his own utter insignificance is finally breaking through his denial. Arthur Sterling watched Marcus steal from me, Nia states, her voice turning to ice. He watched Marcus funnel my money to his mistresses. He watched the Jenkins family treat me like a servant. And while Marcus was busy trying to destroy my life, Arthur Sterling reached out to me in the shadows. We struck a deal. Harrison Vance opens the leather portfolio, retrieving a thick stack of legally binding, irrevocably sealed documents. Arthur Sterling legally facilitated my private adoption of Zuri. Nia declares, the power radiating from her every syllable. I did not buy a child to compete with you, Marcus. I raised the sole biological granddaughter of Arthur Sterling. I gave her the love, the stability, and the fiercely protective home that Valerie was utterly incapable of providing. Valerie falls to her knees, weeping loudly, the silver sequins of her dress scraping against the cold floor. She has lost the only game she ever knew how to play. As for the company, Nia says, stepping right up to Marcus, so close he can smell the expensive perfume and the raw dominance rolling off her skin. Arthur Sterling's final will and testament bypassed his daughter entirely. 60% of the controlling shares of Sterling Global Industries have been transferred into an ironclad trust for Zuri. Marcus physically stumbles backward, his hands raised as if trying to ward off the incoming barrage of truth. And until Zuri turns 25, Nia delivers the final lethal strike. I am the sole executor of that trust. I am the legal guardian of the heir. I am the chairman of the board, and I am the supreme boss of Sterling Global Industries. Every bank account, every subsidiary, every single corporate asset answers directly to me. The total silence on the terrace is broken only by Valerie's pathetic, breathless sobbing. Mama Jenkins has sunk into a patio chair, her feathered hat tilted sideways, her face buried in her hands as she realizes her entire fantasy world has just been incinerated. Bradley is already backing away toward the exit, desperately trying to figure out how to outrun the violent creditors waiting for him on the south side. Marcus looks at the woman he discarded. He looks at the vintage diamonds at her throat, the priceless signet ring on her finger, and the beautiful, wealthy heir resting in her arms. He realizes he threw away an empress for a bankrupt, drug-addicted fraud. Nia, wait, please! Marcus begs, his voice completely stripped of its former arrogance. He is pleading now, a pathetic broken shell of a man. We can fix this. I am still vice president. We can work together. I know the company. I can help you. Nia looks at him with profound glacial disgust. She does not shout. She does not gloat. She executes him with administrative precision. You are not a vice president. Marcus, Nia says quietly, sealing his fate. As my first official act as chairman, I am terminating your employment with Sterling Global Industries effective immediately. Your corporate accounts are frozen. Your access badges are deactivated. You have absolutely nothing. You are nothing. She turns her attention to the elite Vanguard security team waiting silently by the doors. Escort Mr. Jenkins and his family off my property. Nia commands, her voice echoing with supreme authority. If they resist, involve the local authorities. Nia turns her back on them, adjusting Zuri in her arms, walking gracefully toward the ballroom to claim her rightful throne. She leaves Marcus, Valerie, and the entire Jenkins family completely destroyed in the darkness, stripped of their wealth, their pride, and their dignity exactly as they deserved. The camera drops into a stark, extreme low angle, gazing up at Nia. Against the backdrop of the darkening evening sky and the imposing architecture of the country club, she towers over the terrace like a monument of absolute retribution. The midnight green silk of her gown cascades downward, framing her as an untouchable force of nature. Wait. Nia's voice slices through the cool night air just as the elite Vanguard security team reaches out to seize Marcus by the arms. The guards freeze instantly, stepping back with military precision, but remaining coiled and ready to strike. Marcus gasps for air, his chest heaving, a fleeting, pathetic glimmer of hope flashing in his bloodshot eyes. He thinks she is offering a reprieve. He thinks she is going to show mercy. He is completely wrong. Nia raises her right hand and executes a single sharp snap of her fingers. Harrison Vance steps forward with lethal efficiency. He signals to a junior legal associate waiting in the shadows of the ballroom doors. The associate practically sprints onto the terrace, carrying two massive, heavily indexed leather binders. He slams them down onto the nearest pristine white marble cocktail table. The heavy thud sounds exactly like a judge's gavel falling, echoing across the dead silence of the patio. I told you that you are terminated, Marcus, Nia states, her voice ringing with glacial authority. But I want to make it entirely clear to you, to Valerie, and to every Sterling Global executive standing on this terrace tonight, exactly why you will never work in corporate America again. Marcus stares at the thick binders, the color draining from his face until his skin resembles wet ash. Open it, Nia commands Vance. The chief legal counsel flips open the first binder. It is filled with heavily highlighted bank statements, routed wire transfers, and internal audit reports. For the past 14 months, you have been actively embezzling from Sterling Global's acquisitions division. Nia details, her words hitting Marcus like physical blows. You thought you were a genius. You set up a web of ghost vendors and fake consulting firms to siphon millions of dollars directly into your private offshore accounts. You used my company's money to fund your lavish lifestyle. You used Arthur Sterling's money to buy Valerie's engagement ring. You used my money to pay for the mistresses you hid from me during our marriage. Marcus opens his mouth to speak, to deny it, to spin one of his trademark lies, but his vocal cords refuse to cooperate. The evidence is right in front of him, meticulously gathered, verified, and legally weaponized. The Sterling Global executives in the crowd murmur in shock, shaking their heads in disgust at the sheer, unadulterated fraud perpetrated by the man who was supposed to be their new vice president. Valerie physically recoils from Marcus as if he is carrying a highly contagious disease. Her hands fly to her mouth, staring at the engagement ring on her finger with sudden violent revulsion. The illusion of her perfect wealthy savior has just been completely incinerated. Nia does not stop there. She slowly shifts her gaze past the broken shell of her ex-husband. Her cold, predatory eyes lock onto Bradley. Bradley is sweating profusely. His arrogant tech bro swagger has completely vanished. He is slowly, desperately trying to inch his way backward toward the grand staircase, hoping to slip away into the night while Marcus takes the fall. Do not take another step, Bradley, Nia warns, her voice cracking like a whip. Two Vanguard security contractors immediately step into Bradley's path, blocking his escape and forcing him back into the center of the terrace. He raises his hands defensively, his eyes darting around like a cornered rat. You actually had the audacity to stand here and mock me, Nia says, taking a slow, measured step toward him. You bragged about real wealth. You bragged about your crypto empire. But you are just a glorified criminal playing on a computer in a tailored suit. Harrison Vance flips open the second binder. Your entire tech startup is a fraudulent shell company, Nia declares, projecting her voice so Mama Jenkins and Tasha hear every single syllable. You have been running a highly sophisticated money laundering operation for the South Side syndicates. You took their dirty cash, funneled it through unregulated crypto exchanges, and washed it clean. And you were arrogant enough to use Tasha's struggling fashion boutique as one of your primary cleaning terminals. Tasha lets out a piercing, terrified shriek. She drops her smartphone, the screen shattering against the marble floor. She covers her face, hyperventilating as the reality of her own criminal complicity comes crashing down. Mama Jenkins staggers, clutching the back of a patio chair for support. Her extravagant feathered hat looks absurd and tragic as she realizes her entire family is not a dynasty of success, but a pathetic, collapsing criminal enterprise. Both of her golden sons are entirely ruined. You routed millions of dollars of cartel money through your own sister's business. Nia continues, her eyes locked on Bradley's terrified face. And when you lost a massive portion of their funds in a bad trade last week, you panicked. You thought Marcus marrying into the Sterling family would give you the leverage to pay them back. You thought you could hide behind Valerie's money. Bradley is shaking his head rapidly, tears welling in his eyes. Nia, please. He begs, his voice cracking into a high-pitched whine. You do not understand the people I owe money to. They are going to kill me. You have to help me. We are family. Nia simply looks at him, her expression carved from stone. Family, she repeats the word, dripping with venomous irony. She turns slowly, ensuring she takes in the sight of Marcus, Bradley, Tasha, and Mama Jenkins. The mighty, arrogant Jenkins family reduced to a group of weeping, terrified criminals begging for mercy from the woman they spent a decade trying to destroy. Nia gently adjusts Zuri in her arms, securing the little girl who will inherit the earth. The camera pushes in for a tight, intense close-up on Nia's face. The ambient light catches the sharp, dangerous curve of her smile. You stood right there just a few minutes ago, Marcus. Nia says, her voice a soft, lethal purr that carries the weight of a death sentence. You looked me in the eye and loudly proclaimed that discarding me on Christmas Eve was the absolute best decision of your entire life. She pauses, letting the absolute finality of the moment sink into his bones. Let us see if handing you and your arrogant brother over to the FBI turns out to be mine. Nia turns her back on the wreckage. She signals the security team with a brief, dismissive nod. The Vanguard contractors immediately move in, grabbing Marcus and Bradley by the arms, dragging the kicking, screaming men toward the exit. The wails of Mama Jenkins and Valerie fade into the background as Nia walks gracefully through the grand glass doors, stepping into the brilliant light of the ballroom to claim her empire. Marcus drops heavily to his knees, the sound of his hands striking the polished marble floor echoing like dry bones snapping. The crushing gravity of reality finally breaks through his shattered ego. All the manic arrogance, the theatrical posture, and the vicious, conditional pride he had weaponized against Nia for a decade completely evaporate. He looks up at her from the floor, his face twisted into a mask of pathetic, sniveling desperation, his eyes wide with the terror of a man watching his entire life catch fire in real time. Nia, please, Marcus gasps, his hands trembling as he reaches out toward the hem of her midnight green gown, not daring to actually touch the fabric. Please listen to me. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I was blind. I was stupid. We were married for 10 years, Nia. You know me. You know my heart. You cannot do this to me. You cannot hand me over to the feds. It will destroy me. It will ruin our family name. Think of everything we built together. Nia stands perfectly still, holding Zuri tightly against her shoulder. She watches him crawl on the floor with the cold, detached fascination of an executioner checking the alignment of a blade. His words do not penetrate her armor. The tears of a predator caught in his own trap carry zero currency in her world. Beside him, Valerie goes completely feral. The sudden total loss of her inheritance, her pedigree, and her untouchable high society status causes her mind to violently snap. She lunges toward Nia, her fingers curved into claws, her expensive silver sequined gown ripping at the seams as she screams with a manic, unhinged fury that shocks the eavesdropping guests. "You p—" Valerie shrieks, her voice cracking into a high-pitched, terrifying wail. "You stole her from me. You stole my father's company. Zuri is my daughter. She belongs to me. You are a fraud, a pathetic, calculating suburban nobody who crawled into my family's house to rob us blind. You cannot take what is mine. I am a sterling. I will kill you. I will tear your eyes out." Before Valerie can even close the distance, two massive Vanguard security contractors step into her path with terrifying speed. They catch her by the arms mid-lunge, neutralizing her weight instantly. They twist her arms behind her back, pinning her to the marble floor. Valerie thrashes wildly, screaming obscenities, her perfect blonde hair dragging through the shattered glass of her dropped champagne flute. Seeing her children completely dismantled, Mama Jenkins breaks away from the patio table. Her fragile performance of high society elitism vanishes, replaced by a raw, desperate instinct to manipulate. She runs across the terrace, her heavy feathered hat flying off her head, as she throws herself onto the floor at Nia's feet. She wraps her arms tightly around Nia's silver-buckled shoes, sobbing loudly, unleashing the grand theatrical performance of religious guilt she had used for decades to control her family. "Nia, my sweet child. Please, Mama." Jenkins wails, her face covered in tears and running mascara as she squeezes Nia's ankles. "Forgive them. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, I beg you for mercy. We are all sinners in the eyes of God. The Bible teaches us to turn the other cheek to show grace to those who trespass against us. Do not let anger harden your beautiful heart, baby. They are just boys. They made mistakes. Forgive them. Nia, forgive them, active in the name of the Lord." Nia looks down at the matriarch, clutching her feet. The camera remains in a low angle, emphasizing Nia's towering absolute dominance over the weeping family. Slowly, deliberately, Nia steps backward, pulling her shoes completely out of Mama Jenkins's desperate grip. She looks at the older woman with an unblinking, glacial gaze that carries the weight of an absolute final judgment. "God may have mercy on them." "Mama Jenkins," Nia says, her tone conversational, her voice dropping into a lethal quiet whisper that cuts through the screams of the terrace. "God may forgive them, but the Federal Bureau of Investigation will not." Right on cue, the heavy doors to the country club terrace are violently thrown open one final time. A dozen federal agents in tactical gear, their jackets emblazoned with the bright yellow letters of the FBI, flood the patio. They move with terrifying synchronized speed, drawing their weapons and commanding the crowd to freeze. The upscale guests partition themselves, screaming and scattering as the feds sweep past the tables, ignoring the sterling global executives and focusing directly on the center of the patio. Marcus Jenkins. Bradley Jenkins, the lead agent, shouts, his voice carrying the absolute finality of the law. "You are under arrest for grand larceny, embezzlement of corporate funds, and federal money laundering. Hands behind your backs now." The contractors release their grip just enough for the federal agents to slam Marcus and Bradley onto the cold marble floor. The sharp, mechanical click of steel handcuffs snapping into place echoes across the breathless terrace. Marcus lets out a high-pitched, pathetic sob as his face is pressed into the stone, his vice presidential dreams permanently shattered. Bradley thrashes against the zip ties, crying out for lawyers, his crypto empire revealed as nothing more than a front for cartel cash. Nia watches the arrest for exactly 3 seconds. She does not smile. She does not celebrate. She simply shifts Zuri in her arms, ensuring the little girl's face is turned away from the ugly, desperate spectacle of the Jenkins family's total annihilation. The camera begins a smooth, deliberate dolly-out sequence, slowly retreating onto the lawn, leaving the absolute chaos, the flashing red and blue police lights, and the screaming family behind in the distance. Nia turns her back on the wreckage. She takes Zuri by her tiny, soft hand, letting the little girl walk beside her. Together, the mother and daughter step away from the country club, walking into the clean, crisp night air, heading toward the waiting luxury vehicle. Nia does not look back. Not once. She does not afford them a single lingering glance. She has completely excised them from her existence. She looks straight ahead into the darkness, her eyes fixing on the city skyline gleaming in the distance. Her face is a picture of absolute, unshakable peace. You never need to dirty your own hands to get revenge. Nia says, her voice serving as the definitive final voiceover of the story, clear, calm, and resonant with ultimate power. You do not need to fight them in the mud. Just climb to the absolute top of the mountain. Stand on the highest peak of your own success and watch the people who once tried to croot you down inevitably bury themselves in the bottomless pit of their own greed. The car door closes with a solid, heavy thud. The engine roars to life and the taillights disappear down the winding drive. The camera cuts to black.